I think that's it for Solo, because we've got to talk about The Mandalorian, and we have a lot to talk about.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
To tie these over, I've been hearing a lot recently with Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan coming out that there's a couple people have been upset. I know, can you imagine that on the internet?
Inconceivable.
That Star Wars, like Reid said, isn't taking things far enough in their universe. Every new thing coming out is only one step past our immediate cast of the three trilogies.
Yeah.
So going out of that, Mandalorian for those people must have been a breath of fresh air.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you take this established world by Dave Filoni in the series Mandalore. Even the casual viewer has probably heard something here or there about this planet or these Mandalorians just because Boba Fett's been in the series, the movies, and you go into this. This series was something else for the time. You had just come out. You're about to go into Rise of Skywalker, as you pointed out at the start. This came first. In people's minds, that divisive Solo, or that divisive Last Jedi, and the mediocre Solo just happened, and this series comes out, and it just blows everyone away.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Absolutely. And also,
it was the return to classic Star Wars, is how I think about it.
Absolutely. And also, it was unprecedented because this was Disney Plus's launch title. Like, this was really all Disney Plus had to start. I mean, of course, they had a backlog of a bunch of movies, but this was the original series that Disney Plus opened with. We had never seen a mainline Star Wars thing outside of the movies before. So this was groundbreaking. I mean, obviously, we've seen the animation, but in live action, there was nothing like The Mandalorian.
This was so new that my family wasn't sure if Disney Plus was worth it at that point. So we pirated the entirety of The Mandalorian Season One.
I mean, honestly, that's what I did. I didn't know what to make of Disney Plus at first, so I didn't actually buy Disney Plus until Season 2 came out in 2020. So, you know, it was absolutely groundbreaking. And Matt, you're absolutely right. I mean, The Mandalorian, when that came out, even the most hard-hearted Star Wars cynics, of which we've been members from time to time, all three of us, we have to admit that this was such a breath of fresh air, and we were floored. I was floored by how refreshing it felt, you know, coming off of the sequel films and the, you know, you had Rogue One and Solo, which were both good, but they were really just filling in gaps. Rogue One was, well, however did the Rebels get the plans to the Death Star? And Solo was just, however did Solo become Solo? This was something really new and fresh, and it had this really thrilling kind of roguish Western take on Star Wars that was different. And it felt like Star Wars innovating again, which was so exciting. So I think we'll break it down this way. We'll talk about Mandalorian Season 1, and then we'll talk about Mandalorian Season 2. So starting with the Mandalorian Season 1. Well, let's just start here. I mean, that opening episode, thrilling, absolutely floored me. I mean, it was... we're just meeting this character, Din Djarin, for the first time, and just watching him spend an episode, this is before we ever meet the child, to just be this hardened, badass bounty hunter who's going around the galaxy capturing people. Like, it was really, really cool. That was such an exciting first episode. And the assault on that base in the first episode with, I forget the name of the droid, but the droid IG-11, voiced by Taika Waititi. All that stuff was awesome. And, yeah, it was just, what a strong way to start this new series.
Yeah, 100%. The first episode, Baby Yoda, or as we'll later learn, he's Grogu, was definitely the hook of the series. That is what was designed to make people come back. And I wasn't sure, it certainly worked on me. I wasn't sure I would keep watching until that happened. However, the entire shootout at where he was being kept between IG-11, the Mandalorian, and all of those, I don't know if they were bandits or pirates. I think that's still unclear.
Yeah.
That leading into that hook, I mean, it kept building and building, and I knew this was going to be something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, what made it the most captivating was just the visual style of it. I mean, we open up and he's in like a typical, actually, does it open in the bar? Does it open like on a ship?
It opens
but he's on
the
like
bar, I believe.
Yeah, in the bar.
Yeah, and he captures the guy, and you see like kind of these weird looking aliens, but they're clearly like kind of makeup stuff put on people. Yeah. They're not like CGI. They're makeup. You have this like practical door kind of opening and closing the whole ice planet. You see him flying the ship. That's a miniature. They film it the same way the original Star Wars movies were filmed, with using miniatures. So it just makes it feel so kind of authentic and genuine. Same thing with the well, I actually don't know about the I think the guy that he meets on the desert planet, I forget his name, but I think he was CGI, but like his voice line where he's like, I have spoken.
Yes.
Like that feels classic Star Wars. Like that's just kind of a weird alien quirk, and we don't really see much of that anymore. I don't know. It just felt really like, okay, this genuinely feels like fresh out of George Lucas's pocket, of right after, the events of the original trilogy. Yeah. And it just works so well. I'm so glad for Grogu they went with a puppet, like a practical puppet, because it sells it and it makes it seem a lot more like the actual Yoda.
Absolutely.
I don't know if they had practical droids, but like whatever they could do practical, they did.
Absolutely. And that's what, as you said, that's what made it feel so tactile and so Star Wars, because they were going to all these great pains to actually make it feel authentic to what we've seen in not just Star Wars in general, but of course the original series of Star Wars, which this follows, plot-wise, chronologically. And it pays off. It would have been so easy to just stuff this series chock full of CGI like they do with everything else. But you have Jon Favreau and you have Dave Filoni, two people who really revere the Star Wars canon and really want to do it properly. And they do the extra work and they take the extra steps to great effect. So it is so great that those two, and this will be a running theme throughout, those two were the perfect pair for this project. I mean, you have two people that just love the Star Wars world, love the Star Wars sandbox, if you will, and especially with Dave Filoni acting as kind of the Star Wars lore master for the whole thing. You know, everything works, everything fits together. You don't have the Mandalorian creating these big plot holes. Everything is fitting together as it should for the greater story, which is fantastic. So yeah, it's been said many times, and I don't think it's inaccurate, that you have Jon Favreau, the man who launched the MCU effectively, is also the man who you could easily argue came in to save Star Wars after the misfires of the sequel trilogy. So yeah, I couldn't imagine a better pairing for this. Now, in the next episode, the big highlight of that was the battle with the Mudhorn in episode 2. Episode 2, The Child. And well, first, before we even get to that, at the very end of episode 1, the big reveal is the identity of the child, and we see that it's this baby Yoda. And that was huge, because up until now, we've really never seen, we've only seen 2 members of Yoda's race. You have Yaddle, who was on the Jedi Council in the prequels, and you have Yoda. And that's it. That's all we've seen from this race. So it was just shocking to see another, and a baby one, no less. And in episode 2, we get to see just how powerful he is when he stops that rampaging Mudhorn dead in his tracks. That was a really cool fight, both watching the Mandalorian try to deal with it, and then seeing the scope of Baby Yoda's power. Yeah, I'm guessing. Do you guys feel the same way?
I absolutely loved the fight between the Mandalorian and the Mudhorn, with Grogu stepping in to show the audience that this isn't just going to be a vulnerable thing all the time. This could have big implications for the story just from its abilities alone, not even where it came from.
Absolutely.
But I think my favorite part of the episode was seeing the Jawas again. Seeing just a casual. We get to see what happens what happens with what they scrap. Everyone just kind of has to deal with it. And we got to see them defend the crawling fortress, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I always imagined that thing was incredibly sluggish, but that thing can book it.
Oh, yeah. That thing can move. Who knew? And we also revisit that again in Season 2 as well, as we'll see in just a moment. Chapter 3, The Sin, I remember being very good. I don't recall any big standout moments. Oh, well, yeah. Well, this is when the Mandalorian is about to turn it into the Empire remnants, but then he ends up changing his mind, going back and rescuing him. That was cool. I remember liking Chapter 3. But I wanted to talk about Chapter 4, Sanctuary.
Well, before we move on from Chapter 3.
Yeah.
This is, I know I'm probably sounding like a huge nerd for this, but...
Oh, no, we all are. Trust us. This is space for it.
With Dave Filoni on staff, the guy who did Clone Wars and Rebels and all that, watching Mandalorian the first time I went through it all was already an amazing experience, because it's just a great series overall. Yeah. After watching those series in their entirety for the first time, re-watching Mandalorian was a completely different viewing experience. In The Sin, we get to see the Mandalorian covert, I think that's what they call it, underneath the sewers of Navarro.
Yes, yeah.
Even the armor that the Mandalorians are wearing now have lore implications in the universe, and it tells a story on the armor people are wearing when they interact with one another. Yeah. And it was at this moment that everything I watched in the previous series paid off, and I got super excited to rewatch it again. Absolutely.
And I have to give you a lot of credit, because you're the only one here who has seen all of the animated series, so you can clue us in on stuff that we're not aware of from those series. Because I know that because of that Dave Filoni connection, you have a lot of that stuff that's being pulled over from animated setups into the Mandalorian. Of course, most notably with in Season 2, Bo-Katan, thank you. Bo-Katan, who was literally an animated character now brought into live action, which was thrilling. So
also Ahsoka too.
Ahsoka as well. Series. Yeah. Season 2. I'm very excited to talk about Season 2. But no disrespect to Season 1, because Season 1 was awesome. But there's so much in Season 2. So Chapter 4, Sanctuary. I liked this episode a lot because it was just really it just felt like a really good self-contained episode. The Mandalorian has to teach this village how to defend themselves against this, these raiders and their stolen modified ATST, which I loved how they designed it because they made it look like an old school like horror monster thing. It looked really scary, and just he has to teach this village. It's like a classic like old samurai movie. He arrives in this village and he has to teach them how to defend themselves, or the Magnificent Seven as well, from these rampaging raiders. And it was really cool, and directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, as we mentioned, the daughter of Ron Howard, who directed Solo. So I think she did a great job. I really liked that episode.
I agree. I really like the setting of this planet in particular. I like the blue krill farmers. I like not often do we see a planet in Star Wars that's tribal, at least not in the mainline things that get popular. They're either barren wastelands, like I'm going to say Tatooine because it's mostly desert, even though there are the small outposts here and there.
Yeah.
Or they're sprawling cities or huge fortresses like Starkiller Base or Coruscant, or Naboo.
Yeah.
But with this one, this is a village in the middle of nowhere. They make a point to go to this place because there's no spaceport, there's no population density. The only thing that's there is a tavern that we see.
Yeah.
And then an entire day's travel away is a village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so it felt like a really cool change of pace and just a really good self-contained adventure. And so I thought this was a great episode.
It also made the Mandalorian like really human, I think.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
He's kind of hidden behind this mask the whole time, so you only ever see him as like this bounty hunting, ass kicking machine.
Yeah.
But then he's like, he's kind of falling for this woman, but he knows that he can't be with her because he can't remove his helmet.
Yeah.
Or he thinks maybe he can leave the child on this planet and maybe it'll be safe.
Yeah.
But it's him like struggling with these kind of responsibilities and duties.
Absolutely. And so they follow this up with Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, which at the time I remember being pretty widely regarded as one of the weaker episodes of Season 1, if not maybe the weakest. This is the episode with Toro, and we meet Fennec Shan. This is on Tatooine. And it was okay. It wasn't a bad hour of television, but it felt like it was it felt like it was a little lightweight compared to what we had seen in the previous 4 episodes. I remember not really being blown away by it.
Yeah, I don't believe this is the weakest. I believe that's our next one coming up. But even on the rewatch, I was kind of waiting for it to be done so I could get to what I knew was amazing coming up.
Yeah.
Fennec I wasn't completely sold on her the first time viewing. And even with Season 2, with what we know happens with her, which we'll get into, I still wasn't fully sold on her. But again, with the Filoni connection, she appears in Bad Batch, and because of that, I'm excited to see what more connections she can have in Book of Boba Fett and beyond.
Absolutely. So yeah, is there anything that stands out to you, Reid, about Chapter 5?
Not really. I don't know. That's
a good stuff.
It was kind of that was the one where he had the speeder, right? And he was
Yeah.
I don't know.
The only
cool.
thing
we got a Lego set based on his speeder, but that's like not really wasn't much from that episode.
Yeah. It felt like it was. Yeah, it felt like it was. It was, if weaker is debatable, but certainly one of the less memorable episodes of Season 1.
Yeah.
But that's followed up by Chapter 6, The Prisoner, which, in my opinion, could very well be my favorite episode of the season. I really loved The Prisoner because this is the prison break episode, and this is where we meet Bill Burr's character Mayfield and his whole crew, and they've got to break break Quinn out of a New Republic prison, a space station prison, and I loved it. It felt like a prison break movie. It felt like a heist movie. And I just love the chemistry of the team. I believe Clancy Brown, he was Berg, the big devil-looking guy, the Deveronian. It just was really cool. I loved the whole vibe throughout, and just Mando being part of this team, and they've got to break this guy out, and seeing the New Republic and seeing them actually be in government and have power and not just as cannon fodder for the First Order and the Force Awakens. That was great. So I loved The Prisoner. I thought this was a really, really cool episode.
Wow. Okay, I hadn't thought of it quite as highly as you did, or in the same way as you did. This, in my opinion, is the weakest episode of the series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I did not care for this at all. This isn't to say it's bad, because every single one of these episodes is at least above a 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
But I would put this as the 6.
Oh, wow.
I found the characters very obnoxious, including Mayfield's. But he did grow on me in his episode in season 2. Don't get me wrong, I loved him then.
Yeah.
But for this, I hated everyone but the droid, and all he did was spout off instructions.
Not fair.
It was really cool to see the New Republic doing things. And I have nothing negative to say about that. That was really cool. And again, that's why it's not a bad episode by any means. But series wide, I think this is the one I enjoyed the least.
Oh, okay. So Reid, you're going to have to break the tie here. Is it good or is it weak?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Matt, but I think I have to agree with Chigo on this one.
Democracy in action.
Yeah, I thought this episode was really strong. To me, this really screamed like this is what modern Star Wars can be. It was kind of a different genre of episode. It was like this prison break story, like almost like a heist movie, kind of as this episode, which I think speaks really highly to kind of the episodic nature of this series rather than serialized, where like each episode is kind of a one-off adventure, because it allows you a lot more freedom in your storytelling, where you can do kind of crazy, different genre episodes like this one.
Absolutely.
But I mean, the big thing for me was the score, surprisingly enough.
I remember,
The Mandalorian has had a great score. I love the intro, but the fact that you have some of these classic Star Wars sounds mixed in with like this kind of raw hip hop, beats and stuff. We've started to see that in like Black Panther and in Shang-Chi, and
same composer, Ludwig Göransson, who won an Oscar for Black Panther.
Yeah, like we're starting to see, kind of hip hop have this, more mainstream place within movies and TV shows and kind of scores. And it happened here too, and I thought, man, this sounds like nothing like the George Lucas movies, but it sounds perfect.
Yeah,
like this is the polar opposite of John Williams, and yet it fits so well. And that was what was really exciting to me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the music, because this is something that I want to harp on, and we're going to talk about it even more in Season 2, because Season 2 had some epic tracks. But Ludwig Göransson composed the music for The Mandalorian, and he kills it. I mean, there was so much good music. The theme is legendary. I love the theme. And also, I'm glad you mentioned it for this episode, because this episode I remember having some really good backing music as well, where it felt very slick and very heisty, which was neat. And I appreciate how Göransson, he's not just trying to do a version of John Williams. He's doing his own thing. And and it's just he's great. He's at his best when he's doing his own thing with the music for The Mandalorian, and it works so well. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him because he kills it with the music in The Mandalorian. It is tremendous. So moving on to Chapter 7, The Reckoning. So this is where we return to Navarro, and the whole town's been taken over by the Client's forces. And of course, we learn by the end of the episode the Client is none other than the big boss, Moff Gideon. The Mandalorian, he recruits Keel and Cara Dune and the rebuilt IG-11 to protect the child. They are attacked by some flying creatures. The child uses the Force to heal Karga. And yeah, really the big thing from this episode is this is the episode that ends when they're pinned down in the tavern in the middle of town by all of Gideon's forces, and he's giving them essentially an ultimatum to hand over the child, or else they're gonna kill everyone, essentially. Yeah. Really the big takeaway was, it was cool to see, IG-11's must protect the child protocol. Like, that was neat. But really the big takeaway was seeing Giancarlo Esposito for the first time as Moff Gideon, who just looks so cool. And my God, was that guy just born to play villains, because he is just so, if I may use the term, deliciously evil. And I mean, he's just got this all black armor, and it just feels like it feels so cool. I'm sorry, First Order, but you're just cosplaying as the Empire. But this guy, he is legit, and you feel the danger. He wants the child, and if he doesn't get him, he's going to kill everybody. Pretty good episode. Not the most memorable from the season, but pretty good.
Or we seem to be at odds again, because this is by far my favorite of the season.
Oh, okay.
It's a huge help that IG-11 is my favorite character in the series.
God, so, Taika Waititi is amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Seeing him and Queel again was a blast. I'm not going to say I was afraid my first time watching through it that it was going to be only episodic without any serialization. But seeing them go back and do the whole recruiting people, I'm in, let's go beat the bad guy thing.
Yeah.
Might be seen as corny, but I loved it. I love seeing these characters that they made so likable.
Yes, yeah.
I love going back to them, and I feel like the deaths of both IG-11 and Queel. Oh, IG-11 doesn't die here. Well, Queel especially. On his way back to the Razor Crest. I think I felt more in this episode than I did in the first two movies in the sequels.
I agree. I remember really feeling something when Queel died. That was very sad.
And then, like you said, Moff Gideon's presence, his entrance onto the scene with all of his troops behind him, which have you guys seen the making of the Mandalorian series on Disney Plus?
I actually haven't. Have you seen it? Reid?
I don't think I've just sat down and watched the series, but I'm pretty sure I've seen some clips, and I've also read a lot about how they made the series.
I've been turning it on here and there when I just need background noise, but all of those stormtroopers are those
fan costumes.
Yeah, they are not professional actors, but they are professional extras. They exist to come to conventions on call whenever Lucas or the Star Wars team need them. And I'm just like, that's so cool to me. That imagine being the guy that I got kicked by the Mandalorian once.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
This episode might be called fan service with all the things they bring in, but I thought that it left that big of a mark because rather than it being service, I felt like it was paying respect to all the fans who have stuck with it. because Star Wars has had its rocky movies. I don't think that's controversial to say, no matter how you enjoy the series. But this episode, even more than the next one, I felt was the culmination of everything we'd been watching in the post prequel world.
Absolutely. It definitely felt like this was the setup for the big final act, and it really did feel like the culmination of everything we've set up earlier in the season, and it really pulled all those threads together nicely by bringing back Kuiil and bringing back IG-11 and introducing the big bad Moff Gideon. It did a great job of balancing all those different things. So in that way, it really was very good.
I think I want to take a moment to mention, I think this is probably my favorite moment in that episode. At least I think it was in that episode. It may have been in the one following, but the scene where you have the two stormtroopers like sitting on their speeders, just like talking to each other, and like asking, "What the fuck is this thing?" It's like, no, don't touch it. Like, I don't want to piss off Moff Gideon. He just like killed, some guy for speaking out of line. So good, and it was like,
that was awesome.
Okay, this is a show that definitely knows and is 100% aware of what it is and the universe that it takes place in.
Yeah, and
which was amazing.
Yeah, which it's so fitting because that was at the very beginning of Chapter 8, the finale of Season 1. And of course it's so fitting because this was the episode directed by Taika Waititi. So he was he was the perfect person to kind of make that moment happen and work really well. So it makes a lot of sense when you consider this was Taika's episode. So essentially this was the grand finale of Season 1, and of course, Mando and the gang, they escape. There's this really cool scene where they're escaping through this underground lava river. That was pretty neat. IG-11 tragically self-destructs in order to allow Mando and the child a chance to escape. And Gideon, this is the climax of the episode. This was awesome. He attacks in his TIE fighter because he's just pissed at this point. But Mando gets to use his new jetpack that he got in the previous episode or a couple episodes ago. He got it from the armor. Oh yeah, maybe it was even earlier that episode. Yeah, he got it from the armor. He uses it to bring the TIE fighter down. And we have a simple ceremony for Kuiil. He buries Kuiil. Grief Karga and Cara Dune, they stay behind on Navarro. We'll check in on them again in Season 2. And of course the episode ends with the biggest reveal of all. Of course, Gideon has survived. And guess what? He has the Darksaber from Rebels, is it?
Both Rebels and Clone Wars.
Rebels and Clone Wars, yeah. So, that was quite a finale.
When I saw that, I was so excited that they were pulling from kind of the extended canon of Star Wars. I haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels, but I've seen and I know enough about it to like know about the Darksaber.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, these guys love Star Wars. This is amazing.
Yeah.
When we watched this the first time at my household, when that came out, I had heard of Clone Wars. My family had never even heard of it. So we were just kind of, what was that? It looked really cool, but what was that? That's what got us to start watching Clone Wars, which anyone who's tried to start watching the series knows is very difficult to get through at the beginning. So it wasn't until the end of Season 2 that we finally were able to push past that initial not wanting to continue. And
yeah, absolutely.
I think that just speaks volumes that this series can make someone go through that to get it. 'Cause
especially when you know that the same guy who wrote this and who designed this story is the same guy who did the Clone Wars and Rebels. That's what gives you so much confidence, because you think to yourself, well, this is great. So if he did that stuff too, and this is pulling from that, then it must be worthwhile to go back and watch that. So that has to be a big help as well. So it was a thrilling finale. what can you say? But Moff Gideon steals the show, and that final shot of him with the Darksaber really is the indelible image of season 1. And yeah, it was a great finale.
Is it safe to say that he's your MVP for season 1?
Ooh, well that's tough because I love me some Gideon, but he was only in 2 episodes, and I wonder if it's fair to give it to him since he wasn't in it all that long. I mean, honestly, I know it's such a cop-out, but I think it has to be the Mandalorian himself because, he's just so...
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, he's the focal point of the show, and the show is so refreshing, and he's so cool, and he plays it so cool, and he has a great relationship with Grogu, the child, and yeah, he's just awesome, and you can tell he's such a badass, but he has a soft side, and it's great to watch him go on these adventures and make these friends and make these enemies, and just he is the glue that holds the whole thing together. And I know it's a cop out because obviously he's such a central part of the show. The show is named after him, but I don't see how I can give it to anybody but Pedro Pascal as Din Djarin. He killed it. How about you guys?
Well, for me, and I want to tie this into something we kind of glossed over in Chapter 8, but my MVP is IG-11, Taika Waititi. He's just so good. He's great. I felt like he stole the show, and whenever he was on screen, and like Moff Gideon, he was only in one more episode than the Moff. But in those 3 episodes, you got an entire character arc.
Oh, and
even more than when Queel died, I was so sad to see IG-11 go at the end, and he died in an epic way.
Oh yeah.
He's wading through lava. But one of the things we glossed over is the first time we see the Mandalorian's face.
Yes.
He gets injured, and IG-11 convinces him.
I wanted to bring that up because when I saw that, like, it's supposed to be this like super emotional moment. It's like he doesn't trust droids, and he's not allowed to take off his helmet, and he like does both of these things. But it was just like, the Mandalorian is like this complete badass. You take off his helmet, and it's just like a baby face with a mustache, and I was just like, what the fuck?
I give him mad props for that. They could have made them this. They could have made him this badass looking guy, like Jango Fett and Boba Fett. Clones, but they didn't.
He's just some dude, yeah.
It's some dude, and I think that's a very Star Wars thing to do, especially with the message Disney seems to be putting out, which is anybody can be a hero or a villain, depending on the choices they make.
Absolutely.
And we also learned his backstory in these 2 episodes, where he was just a scared little kid who was inspired by the heroics of the Mandalorians, and look what he's going on to do that we go and see him do. And I think that's just a really cool statement.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. And, of course, it's not the last time we see him take off his helmet either. And I think that in Season 2, and we'll talk about this, but in the Season 2, when he takes off his helmet, I guess maybe this is just a factor of recency bias, because this was more recent. I guess I felt it a little bit more in Season 2 when he took off his helmet, and the reason why he was doing that in Season 1. But in Season 1, when I think back to it, he would have died if he didn't take off his helmet in that moment. So, but in Season 2, he wasn't doing it not because he was in mortal danger, but because he was trying to save his friend, Baby Yoda. So, but it was good. It was a very powerful moment. So that was Season 1. It's hard to really give Season 1 a score because it was something so different and so new, both in terms of Star Wars, just in terms of a streaming series, because we had never seen Star Wars in a live action format in anything other than a movie before. But it was great. I mean, I think that it's a 9 out of 10 if I had to give it a score, but honestly, it's just tough to give a score because of what it is.
I'd give it an 8.5. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I would rewatch it again and again and again. There are episodes like The Gunslinger, and I know I'm alone in this one, The Prisoner, where it felt like a lot of the episode was filler to me, with 1 or 2 things tagged on at the end to come back later. That being said, that filler was presented in a very cool way most of the time. The obvious exception being The Gunslinger. So 8.5 for me. Reid, you still haven't given us your MVP though. I'm sorry, I totally took it off the rails.
Oh, but... no, don't worry about it. I'll do MVP first, which is either going to be Quill, because he kind of took it back to that, like, oh, this is like a classic Star Wars alien. It had that, like, classic Star Wars feel. And just he was great. But also the kind of in between for Moff Gideon and the Stormtroopers, that really old guy that we first meet.
Yes, Werner Herzog's character. I forget his name.
Yeah,
yeah, I loved him too. Yeah,
so good.
Yeah,
he was so captivating. And he really doesn't say much, and he like speaks really softly, but that, like, he's one of the most memorable characters for me, and he was only in a couple episodes. So, those would be my 2 picks.
Yeah. Also, I want to also shout out what's the character's name? Oh gosh, what's the character's name? I can't seem to.
Is it the Marshal?
Grief Karga, Carl Weathers. He was. It was also. I mean, just any opportunity to see Carl Weathers again is great, and he does a great job as Grief Karga, both as Mando's, kind of boss and friend, and how he kind of has to turn on him in episode 3, and he becomes his friend again by the end of the season. I really liked Carl Weathers as Grief Karga, so he was great.
Yeah. But as for season 1 score, stop trying to take my moments.
I'm
you
sorry.
guys.
I'm so excited to get to season 2.
I'm here too. Okay. I'm actually gonna give season 1 a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
I loved every minute of it. I was so excited. And it really made me fall in love with Star Wars again. The newer movies kind of pushed me away from that, and I was like, oh, I don't like this new, era and style of Star Wars. And then The Mandalorian came out, and I was like, this is what I loved about the original movies, and it's all here. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to keep jumping the gun, but it's just because this seems like such a perfect jumping off point to now talk about season 1 in relation to season 2, because we have heaped so much praise on season 1, and for me at least, and I want to get your guys' takes on this up front actually as opposed to the end, I feel like season 2 even surpassed the highs of season 1. I would give season 2 a 10 out of 10. I loved it. I really did love it, and there were so many standout episodes. So, where do you guys think season 1 stacks up next to season 2?
I won't give my ranking on season 2 yet because I won't be able to call out specifics until we go through the episodes.
Sure, yeah.
But comparative-wise, I'm actually going to give 2. Before. I get it. I guess I get that I'm being a shell here. But before I watched the series, season 2, I would have put on even ground with season 1, no doubt. It felt good to have more plot, more serialization, as Reid put it. But afterwards, now that I can get everything, all the intricacies of Bo-Katan and Ahsoka and all that, it's at least 3 points higher by default. But I realize with my first rating of 8.5 that's not possible, but it's just that much better.
Yeah.
So I guess this is my turn to disagree with the two of you. I actually put season 2 as a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
I thought it was a little bit weaker than the first season.
Okay.
And my justification for that is because I feel like season 2 of The Mandalorian was doing a little bit too much heavy lifting, because it stopped being about the Mandalorian and started being about Boba Fett, the next upcoming series, and Ahsoka, the next upcoming series. And it kind of took away a little bit from kind of the heart and the soul of season 1, which was like this, new father figure trying to, battle his way through the universe and protect his, little baby boy. And it suddenly stopped being about that, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And all of those episodes were fantastic. It, did an excellent job. It's still a 9 out of 10. But I just felt that it those episodes like distracted from the heart of what the Mandalorian was in season 1.
I can see that. Again, maybe we should come back to this at the end. I feel like season 2 is, in hindsight, going to be viewed as a transition season. Between the Mandalorian, the person, versus, and that's what the series is about, versus the series being about the Mandalorian as a creed, as a race on Mandalore. So I feel like there's a good mix of setup and of setup for what's to come, seeing people that we would have seen in the past, and your one-off adventures with the little baby boy.
Absolutely, and honestly, I think, Reid, you make a very fair criticism that in season 2 there was a lot of heavy lifting, and as you rightly point out, it's, you have both the Mandalorian and also Ahsoka and Boba and Bo-Katan and all of these major things, and the showdown with Moff Gideon, and obviously the finale, which is huge, and we'll talk about that. And it is a lot, and it does set up a lot of different things. So I think that's a fair criticism. It was definitely, it was definitely trying to do a lot. I think it did it successfully, but
for sure.
It was a lot less focused than season 1. And it's kind of like Endgame in that way, Avengers Endgame, where Avengers Endgame is both, wrapping up the story that is the Infinity Saga, but it also has to set up the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and also has to set up Loki, and also has to set up, this person for this next movie, and, it had a lot to do, and had to wrap up this story, and, there was a lot going on within that single movie outside of just finishing the story that began with both at the beginning of the Infinity Saga and immediately before in Infinity War. So it dealt a little bit like that. So let's get into it.